So there's a relatively new debate that's going on, and relative in the Transformer collecting community might only be in the last couple of years. But this debate is talking about faux parts or fake parts. And I want to talk about this and give you a reason why we're doing it, why it's there, and give you both sides of the debate. Let you decide if you think it's good or if you think it's bad. Now, I've probably said it 10 or 15 times, but I'm going to say this again because it applies here more than anywhere. That Transformers, the cartoon in G1, was based on a toy line that actually is really cool. But what they did was they took these toys and made them look larger in life. Larger, bigger, massive, better, and a lot more interesting. And so with that, there's no way that the characters we saw on the show would match those toys. It just doesn't happen. And we accepted that as kids, that we're not going to get a figure that looks exactly like that. But it always bothered me that my Megatron didn't look like the Megatron on the show, that my Ironhide didn't look like Ironhide. I don't know what it looked like, but it didn't look like Ironhide. But they made the figures look interesting on the show. And then you bought it just because, well, you filled in the gaps with your imagination, right? So fast forwarding to today, we're seeing masterpiece figures made that match the cartoon. But in some cases, with some figures, there are going to be a couple of issues to get from a car mode to a robot mode that matches that animation. And one of those issues is the use of faux parts or fake parts. Now, for the sake of time, I'm really not going to get into any other lines like the Generations Jetfire that had a fake nose cone to pull that transformation off. And I don't even think they pulled it off that well. There's no reason that they needed to do that. But anyhow, we're not going deep into that. We're going to be going into the Masterpiece line, and only with a few characters. So there's two characters that pose the biggest problem. There are more than just two characters, or actually there's three, but there are more out there that we could probably identify that are going to have this issue. But I want to say that these two are the biggest debate. And that's with Cliffjumper and Sunstreaker. Now we're going to talk about the future after we talk about these guys. But I'm going to talk about these guys and I'm going to give you the pros and the cons of using these faux parts. I want to start by talking about Sunstreaker. Now Sunstreaker is really where, I don't want to say that this started in the Masterpiece line, but this is where I started hearing the most discussion and debate. And if you can look all the way across the line here, you do see we have the original G1 toy on the left. You've got the Bad Cube, and you've got the animation still, which this is just the Sunbow one. And then you have Megonics. So we're talking about some outdated Masterpiece along with this, but we got to see where we went so we can see where we can go. And looking at the animation model, the Bad Cube wasn't that bad. It was a pretty decent design. And I gotta say that I'm not too upset about it. And if I had a Bad Cube and I never got the Masterpiece, I probably would just stick with Bad Cube. But you know, if that's what you choose to do, that's fine. But I really think Takara took this figure to the next level. And when they took it to the next level, they matched the animation a lot closer. But here's the biggest point here. Look at the G1 and how did animators get the animation from that G1 figure? It's a far stretch in my opinion. It's an extremely far stretch. But we're doing it now. So Takara's use of this faux chest brought us to new levels, and well, what it did was it brought new problems along the way. So the problems that it brought along was, well, it uses a real world car. And that is an issue. It was sort of a tune car in the tune. So I think if making it look exactly like a Lamborghini and turning into Sunstreaker to match the animation is a big challenge. It's a feat of engineering. So what people like to say is that it's lazy engineering. Now, I don't know about you, but I really don't think it's that lazy. But that's what people say about it. They say it's lazy engineering, that we should be able to take it from one to the other and not have to have just like a whole segment of a chest that looks like the top of the car. We should have the top of the car convert down. But we'll talk about why that's not as good down the road. Also, higher parts count. Now they're saying you're going to increase your parts count because you're going to put in another chest and a whole other piece or multiple pieces that are going to be required to make this happen. And so that's been what I've been hearing about all this stuff. But we'll get to the pros after we talk about a couple of these other ones. And let's get into talking about Cliffjumper. Now there are currently a couple of different Cliffjumpers you can pick from. The two main ones that I see people talk about a lot is the Toro from X-Transbots on the right, and on the left is the MMC Helion, and those two are the best options that are out there. Neither one of them nail it. Neither one of them are complete garbage, though. I think they both look decent. But when you get to looking at this, they do both turn in to a car, a real-world car. And if you look at Toro matches a little bit better because he uses faux parts. He uses the fake parts. And I haven't handled the Helion yet, but my belief is that MMC doesn't use the fake parts. So they just try to make it work as best they can without the fake parts. And I prefer the look of Toro. Now, Toro's got a huge backpack, and so yeah, there are some other issues that go along with that, with the fact that is just a complete total fake chest. But it depends on what you want. What's the trade-off going to be? Now, another company, Ace Toys, which was the first Cliffjumper out there, made a pretty decent figure. And I always felt if they could have pulled off the faux chest somehow, they'd have had a bigger hit on their hands. Now, the arms were a little bit short. There were a couple of hang-ups. The feet were kind of big. There were some things with it that weren't the greatest. But just looking at this thing, the downfall is his chest. And that's my belief. And it turns into a real car. And the cars all look very similar, but there's the issue. Now, I, on the other hand, prefer a regular alt mode. I want the alt mode in the cartoon. So that's where we get into Bumble Bee. Now, I'm looking at Bumble Bee. I'm looking at the alt mode. I'm looking at the figure. And this is the version 2 that has yet to be released. But looking at all this, it looks like he's going to use a faux chest. Now, the first thing everyone wants to talk about is he's got a gap in his midsection and his feet look like hot trash. Well, okay, those are issues. But for the sake of this video, we're talking about the faux parts and the fake chest. And you're going to transform this thing from an actual animation alt mode to an animation figure. And they're both, in my opinion, look more like the cartoon than anything we've ever gotten. But it seems like the faux parts take it even one step further. Now, that goes back to the way the animation was drawn. That goes back to the whole idea of basing larger-than-life, interesting-looking characters off of toys that had only come so far technology-wise. So as the Bumble Bee is the future, and the future of this whole faux parts piece, let's talk about the pros and the positives and the good parts about faux parts. You get two great molds. Like, that's the main goal in this, is that both modes look great. Both modes are spot on. Both modes are amazing. Now, I know you're saying, okay, I don't agree with you with Bumble Bee because Bumble Bee's feet and his gap. Okay, so let's go look at a different one. I think MB39 looks great. I know he's got a huge backpack. You're cramming a lot of the car on his back. But for the level of articulation, the screen accuracy, the amazing look, just the posability, everything that you get from this figure, and both modes look great. I don't know that I would chastise this thing. I think it's pretty darn awesome. And I think the fact that you got the faux part is why. Now this is actually the extreme easiest way to do the faux part versus the other figures. This also fixes the issue that you're using a real world car in here and you still turn it in to a tune accurate version of Sunstreaker. I'm pretty impressed. I know it's a lot of work and a lot of engineering. Now, I would say this figure uses faux parts, and it also has a higher part count, meaning more complexity and a lot harder to transform. But I don't think that has anything to do with that one little panel that kind of flips around and is a faux chest. I gotta say, if you were to not have the faux parts, it would add to the part count. And just listen to me on this. If you were to try to make his chest look like it does now, but it was really just a hood, you would have to fold pieces around. So there'd be more joints and more folds, and it would be more delicate joints and more delicate folds with thinner plastic and break easier. Now, that's my stance. And now, with all this said, I like faux parts. I think it is a step into a new direction to be more tuned. Now, a lot of people don't want to be hyper-tuned. But even if you don't want to be hyper-tuned, you can't deny how good this figure looks versus the rest of the competition. And even the bad Cube one was good. It wasn't that bad. But this is still better. So anyway, I want to hear what everybody else thinks about faux parts. What do you think about this? Is anybody still upset about this thing? Or has it blown over and we've accepted it as a community that to get to the next level, we've got to do things different? Well, I'm not quite insane. I'm not going to keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So, like, subscribe, and tight ear and hanger out.